Pregnancy and the postpartum can be a very anxiety-provoking time. Add into that the global pandemic, self-isolation, and a huge amount of uncertainty on future lockdowns and prospects, and we find ourselves amidst a challenging time, to say the least. Equipping ourselves with mindfulness tools and techniques can be game-changing in helping us to manage our daily stresses and anxieties. I was, like many, a mindfulness skeptic until I actually tried it and realised that it's not all about chanting and crystal balls as it's often portrayed. By all means, chant away if that's what works for you, but for so many, it can be a powerful way of focusing our minds and bodies on the present, breathing and relaxing into a calm state that enables us to take on the day in a positive way. On this week's episode, I am delighted to be joined by Rachel Quickenden, a qualified hypnobirthing practitioner from Kent and a mum of her 2 boys. Rachel found hypnobirthing after the birth of her first son. Her birth was relatively straightforward and she felt reasonably prepared, but there had been various pieces of intervention which she didn't feel entirely happy about. She hadn't felt entirely heard or respected by her caregivers. Giving birth made Rachel realise the importance of a mother's birth story to her. It has carried with her for the rest of her life. Rachel was also shocked to hear so many negative birth stories from new mums that she met and spoke to. And she believes that women deserve more, to feel confident, calm and in control, and to be respected and heard by their caregivers. Rachel shared the scepticism that many people feel about hypnobirthing before she learned about it. She was amazed to find out how logical and scientific it actually is, and how mindset is so fundamental to the way that a woman's body labours physically. Rachel trained and qualified with KGHypnobirthing, and then set up Strong Like Mama to teach a full antenatal and hypnobirthing course to expectant couples. Rachel wants women to go through pregnancy and birth feeling truly confident and informed, and to like they are the ones in charge of what happens to their body and their baby, which of course they absolutely are. Women should feel empowered and frankly a little bit like a superhero after birthing a baby. Rachel teaches both group and private courses and offers face-to-face and Zoom classes too. On this episode, Rachel and I discuss how many of the tools used in hypnobirthing can transform into everyday life and assist us to live in a more mindful and present way. And at the end of this episode, I am super excited that Rachel will also be sharing a short relaxation practice. So join us and give it a go in the comfort of your own home to see how you feel afterwards. So welcome, Rachel, and thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on, Rachel, and just hearing about your backstory and what brought you to hypnobirthing, I think will resonate with so many women and their partners, especially given the current times.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a journey for me as much as anyone else. But yeah, I feel really strongly about hypnobirthing. I think it's a real game changer, and I've seen the effect it had on me, and I've seen the changes it's had in my clients as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now more than ever, Rachel, and I'm sure you agree, we can see how the benefits of the principles in hypnobirthing can actually extend so much further into our lives and aren't just for the birth journey themselves, and actually can be helpful in managing all sorts.
Yeah, definitely.
So Rachel, I wonder if you could just introduce to us really some of the tools that you might use in hypnobirthing practices and the things that you teach the couples that you work with, and how we can try and utilise that in our day-to-day life to deal with some of the massive stress and pressure that lots of people are under nowadays.
Yeah, of course. So I essentially give my couples a toolbox. I give them lots of different techniques that they can try out, and then it's about them going away and finding what works for them. I think what's really important with all these things is that not everything is suited to everyone. Some things will really click for you and some things just won't. And there's no point forcing what you don't get on with. So one of the key things that we start with is relaxations, which obviously we'll do one at the end. Really simple. There is nothing to be learned. There's nothing to be doing. It's simply finding a really quiet, comfy space to relax and listening to a guided relaxation. Obviously, in the context of my teaching, it is pregnancy and birth related. It's all positive language about your body and your ability to give birth, your ability to stay calm and to cope with whatever birth scenario you are faced with. And it's really about just physically relaxing, but also learning to mentally relax, because of course it's not the same as chilling out on the sofa in the evening, because we are processing what's happened that day. We're thinking about what we need to be doing the next day, and whilst we are on the face of it relaxing, mentally we are still very busy. And so relaxations give us that time to just try and focus on your breathing, slowing down, thinking about the words in the relaxation. Affirmations are another thing that we use. So I think this is one of the things that people sometimes struggle with the most. I found them a bit weird when I first started hypnobirthing, but they are used in lots of different industries. So sports psychology, business mindset work, lots of different areas, just positive statements which sort of reframe how you look at things and therefore how you approach things in your life and how you respond to different scenarios in life. So that is another classic one about, if you find some affirmations that really sort of speak to you and connect with you, then they can be really powerful. And then it's up to you how you use them sort of every day in your life, whether you read them or write them or just sort of have them up on post-its around the house or whatever it might be that works for you. Visualizations, again, I think that you can take this to different degrees. Some people love some visualization, particularly in relation to birth and what their bodies are doing and their, how their baby might be moving and responding in birth. For me, one really simple thing which I like to do, and this is not even birth related as well, this can be outside of a birth scenario or pregnancy scenario, is going off to my happy place. So I think most people have a happy place that they like to think of, a time when they felt really relaxed, really calm, just everything was really straightforward and happy and simple. And so I know for me, mine was, I went on holiday with my husband a few years back, and we went to the Florida Keys, and I fell asleep in a hammock by the sea. And when I woke up, I was just like, oh my God, that was the best nap I've ever had in my life. So my happy place is I just think about, I go back there and I think, how did I feel? What could I hear? What could I see? What could I smell? I try and take in all of that detail. And you just start picking up on that feeling. You start relaxing and feeling calmer and a bit more relaxed about everything. So I really encourage people to think about what their happy place is, where it is, and really think about the detail of it.
I love that. It's probably as close as we're going to get to a holiday as well at the moment, isn't it?
Well, exactly. We all need imagination right now.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. I mean, falling asleep on a hammock in Florida sounds like the ultimate relaxed state to be in. I love it.
And then of course we do a lot of talking about oxytocin, because we know it's key to labour and birth, and so thinking about all the ingredients that we would need in a birthing scenario to create oxytocin, but also all of that can be extended out of a birthing scenario. Everybody has oxytocin in them. We all need it, whether we are adults, babies, male, female, elderly, whatever it is, we all need oxytocin. It's known as the hormone of love, but actually it's the hormone of life as well. And so thinking about all the things that we can do to encourage that oxytocin, that feel-good hormone, whether it is making love, whether it is touch, kissing, cuddling, that's all really powerful. Feeling safe, feeling private, really sort of getting snuggled up somewhere sort of quite quiet, quite warm, quite dark, that dim lighting, feel good music, all those sorts of feel good things that really help that oxytocin production. So so that's something that I think really just helps you generally, that it's the stuff that we naturally seek out without realizing it.
I love that. So when we think about in a I guess a birth scenario, and I'm sure you teach it to your couples in your courses, when we talk about creating that positive birth environment, which is really oxytocin promoting to assist with labour and birth. But actually, if we're feeling really anxious in ourselves because of something else, so that might be the current global pandemic or something going on in your life that feels stressful and slightly out of control to you, creating that positive environment is kind of similar, isn't it? In that you want your dim lighting, you want those nice smells, you want that comfort, that sort of nice blanket or whatever makes you feel safe and secure. So actually a lot of this things that we adopt for a birth environment, we can actually adopt just for a nice oxytocin promoting environment at home when things feel a little bit stressful.
Absolutely. And you know, the obvious one is, oh, I really need a hug right now. A hug is just like, it's really powerful. It's something that we would naturally seek out when we're upset. And that is a big oxytocin promoter. So that's a classic one.
Definitely. So for people that are lucky enough to live at home with people that can give them a hug, you're brilliant. For those that I guess are living alone at the moment or don't have a social bubble that can facilitate that, that's definitely a challenge. And that's where looking maybe at things like your comfort blanket and feeling secure in other ways can be so important. I read something on social media a couple of days ago that said how trying to differentiate between the idea of being alone and being lonely for those people that are living at home at the moment can be really important actually to try and work out when you're alone, but that's okay and you feel comfortable and happy with it, and when you're actually feeling lonely and maybe you do need to speak to someone on FaceTime or whatever, and actually even that kind of connection can provoke some of that oxytocin.
That's right. So even when you've got that physical isolation, you can still have that emotional connection. You don't have to be emotionally isolated as well.
And that is so important, isn't it? As humans, we're not meant to live in solitude. Like, we're meant to have that support and that connection with other human beings. So it's so important we make sure we get that.
Absolutely.
For sure. And I love a good quote or affirmation, Rachel. I'm guilty. I love it. But you're totally right in that some things strike with you and others just don't. So it's exploring, isn't it? Not that the same affirmation isn't going to resonate with every single couple. So it's exploring those, isn't it, and finding what works for you.
Absolutely. And also I give tools to people so that they can write their own. So if people have a particular worry or concern or something that's particularly bothering them, then being able to flip it on its head and write your own affirmation to deal with that can be really powerful. And you know, it might be that you only find 2 or 3 affirmations that you find helpful, but they can be real game changers. If you've got one that you know is your favorite to have in your head or to say to yourself during labor, for instance, then that can be really helpful. And clearly the same in other scenarios. It's just about tapping into what connects with you.
I love that. That's a really nice little idea that we could probably all benefit from, I suppose. If we wrote down maybe 3 or 5 things that were our major life concerns or anxieties at that time, and then actually find something that puts that into perspective or kind of helps us to manage that. That's a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We could definitely all benefit from that at the moment.
I know. I think we'd struggle to keep it down to 3 or 5.
True. It could take us all week, but I'm sure there'll be a quote out there that balances it. Amazing. And so when we look at the kind of tools, I suppose, that you provide in your hypnobirthing courses, Rachel, is there, I guess, when we look at that kind of relaxation of the mind and the body, it's very much physical and mental, isn't it? And provoking that kind of mind and body connection. And how do you focus, I suppose, on both those things? Because like we kind of alluded to, you can feel physically relaxed sat on the sofa, but actually mentally you're still going 100 miles an hour. And I suspect for lots of mums or expectant mums in life at the moment, that's exactly where their minds are at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important you have to appreciate that the mind and the body are completely connected. So what we know, there are so many examples that I chat about with my clients about where what we feed into the mind affects us physically. So, I mean, I can give you a couple straight off. If you think about, if someone says something that embarrasses you, you physically flush, you blush in your cheeks. So that's an involuntary response that your body is doing because of what you're thinking mentally. Similarly, if you're nervous about, a job interview or an appointment you've got, you get butterflies in your tummy. That's a physical feeling. So it's obvious that by doing the work mentally, you are affecting yourself physically, and vice versa as well. So if you think about perhaps how a lot of us have responded generally negatively to lockdown over the recent months, what are we doing? We're eating more, we're drinking more sometimes, we're probably sleeping worse. It has that physical response to us. And obviously on the vice versa as well. When we're feeling happier and calmer, we generally are, we digest food better, we sleep better, we feel generally calmer. And we know that affects, babies in pregnancy as well. That it's really important to try and keep that stress level under control. So being able to prioritize that time when you can say, do you know what, I am going to, whether it's one evening a week, whether it's just 20 minutes one morning, every now and then regularly, to be able to prioritize that time where you say, do you know what, I need to put aside time where I'm going to focus on my breath, pause, focus on the here and now, and not worry about tomorrow or next week or what's going to happen down the line. It's really beneficial, and really beneficial to do that incrementally in little snippets regularly, rather than waiting until you're sort of at crisis point. Often these sorts of techniques, sometimes people don't come to them until they've had to see their GP because they are struggling, or they've gone through cognitive behavioural therapy. It all works in the same way, with the way we're programming the mind to work. So it's really important that you can do these little things regularly to help you just sort of keep on top of things. We all need this little MOT regularly,
Yeah, I feel like it should be part of, we make sure that we eat and we drink. We should also then make sure that we're protecting our minds in that way as well. Absolutely. And I am for sure guilty, Rachel, being one of those people that doesn't think about any kind of mindfulness until suddenly life feels a little bit stressful and a little bit overwhelming. And I'm like, now I'll do some mindfulness stuff.
Yeah,
like I'm totally
I can't practice what I preach on it. Yeah.
But you're really right, and actually it's really valuable to make it part of your routine. And as I know that we'll demonstrate at the end of our chat today, is it doesn't have to be like this massive half an hour. It can literally be like 10 minutes in the morning or whatever. It's very feasible to actually implement it in our day-to-day life. I've tried to start waking up in the morning, and before I've let my mind start spiraling over all the things I need to get done that day, it's just take a moment to think of 3 things that actually I'm really grateful for. And I think that just helps keep us really grounded, and trying to put to bed the kind of materialistic worries that we have, and thinking actually I'm really lucky that I've got my health, I've got my partner, we've got a roof over our head, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can help just keep things in perspective, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're all guilty of that. Just life's really busy, and we're all juggling a million things at the moment. But when you can just take that 10 minutes, or even less, I yesterday I was dealing with a meltdown from a 3-year-old, my 3-year-old, not someone else's, and I just had to physically take a step back and just focus on my breathing, just take some breaths, and just think, do you know what, I just need to pause and let this be for a moment, because this can go in one of 2 directions, and I just need a bit of time and space and breath. And it really does help if you can just remember to have those little things in your life. They make a difference.
Definitely. And I think sometimes when we're in this whirlwind or treadmill of life, it feels a little bit self-indulgent, but it's totally a necessity, isn't it, for our wellness. And actually, if we're in a better state of mind, then we're a better person, we're a better wife, we're a better mum, we're a better colleague, and all those things. And anyone that listened to episode 1 of the podcast, I had a mum of 2 young children on, who was discussing kind of how she's coped during lockdown with the challenges. She had two children under 2 at that point. And she said that sometimes when the house is chaotic, she'll just look out the window and stare at something and count to 10. So whether that's a bird or a fence post or whatever, but just kind of counting to 10 and just like regrounding your mind and then reapproaching the chaos that is 2 young children running around the house.
Yeah, but hopefully approaching it slightly differently.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully with a quieter voice and a calm.
Yes.
And actually, everyone around you picks up on those vibes and those responses. And we said about in pregnancy, and we know there's loads of emerging evidence about the impact on the growing baby inside the womb of having raised cortisol levels in mum. So cortisol is your like stress hormone. So when you're stressed, your cortisol levels are rising. But actually, even to people externally, they totally pick up on those vibes, don't they, if you're in that kind of stressed or anxious state.
And what's more, they give them off. So I always really like to have birth partners in on my courses as well, because of course, if you've got a birth partner there who is pacing the room and really stressed, and mum can be as zen as she likes, really cool breathing and calm, but you have somebody stressed in the room with you and we pick up on it, it really affects us. So yeah, absolutely, it affects everyone around you.
That's such a good point, isn't it? Because I feel like if we can't do mindfulness for ourselves, maybe we should do it for the people we live with.
Yeah.
Let's help them out.
Yeah, but I love that self-indulgent comment that you made. It's so true that we would think nothing of saying, right, do you know what, I'm going to have a salad for lunch because it's time I had some veg, or do you know what, I just need to cut down my chocolate a little bit because I'm just aware it's spiraling out of control. I'm speaking for myself here. But exactly the same approach should be taken to our mental health, and we need to start looking at it more in the round, in the fact that we would be focusing on our eating, focusing on moving more, focusing on getting some fresh air. Let's focus on our mental health as well, and just do these little things that we can just to keep everything ticking along nicely and under control.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like our little self mind MOT, isn't it? That we can just make sure that we're coping with all the challenges, for sure.
Yeah.
And so then I just wonder if we, on the theme of oxytocin really, and promoting that in a really positive way, I wonder if there's any way we can kind of get some little boost of that in our lives, even when we are in this kind of physical isolation that we are currently living in. But if there's little tips and tricks and ways that people can kind of boost that and hopefully help their mood as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a really good one is that connection with others. I appreciate that we are restricted in how we can connect with others, but there is still value in connecting virtually with people. And there is still value in, if you can still get out to socialize distance, then there is still value in that as well. So I think that's really important. We of course talked about, the value of having someone to hug and having a birth partner there and things like that. But even if you are living away from loved ones, or you live on your own, for instance, there's still a lot that you can do in terms of get all those photos off your phone, get them up around you. We all live in a digital age, but actually having those photos around you so you can see them will really help in terms of your environment. And in terms of, if you think about, like we talked about earlier, those things that we naturally seek out. There's a reason, for instance, we all like Christmas, the twinkliness of Christmas, the coziness of Christmas. If you can think about incorporating those in your life. So I saw this brilliant thing on social media actually, right at the start of lockdown back in April or sometime. And someone put a post up saying, do you know what, until this is all over, my fairy lights are going back up and we're going back to Christmas.
I love it. And
I was like, that is brilliant. That is brilliant, because we love it. Like, it's so nice to have that lighting. There's something magical about it. And it is because it connects with us on this sort of emotional level of, oh, it's just so lovely. Yeah. And so all those things that you can do, having a nicer environment around you makes such a difference. So whether it is getting a new blanket for your sofa, or some really lovely new scented candles, or lighting a log fire, or putting up the Christmas lights, whatever it might be, that can make a real difference.
You'll be completely responsible now, Rachel, for all the Christmas trees going up in November.
I encourage it all. Yeah, and then the other one I think is a really good one is music. So we you know how powerful music is. Like, we've all got a song which makes us cry. We've all got a song which gets us on the dance floor like that instantly. We've all got songs that connect us to a memory, that sort of put us back somewhere and make us think of a holiday or a party or whatever it might be. And so having a relaxing playlist, having a feel-good playlist, stuff that reminds you of really happy times, can be really powerful. And I think that's a really good one as well to have, whether it's just playing in your kitchen or to be able to pop your headphones on and have some chill time with your favourite music.
Yeah, that's so true. Music affects your mood, doesn't it? Even if you just hear a good song, you automatically start smiling and feel better.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. I love that. So that gives us, I guess, some ways that we can try and boost our oxytocin in our home. So enjoy getting your Christmas trees up early. But actually, women quite often will use fairy lights, won't they, in their birth environment. So it alludes back to those things that you might have incorporated in your environment, bringing that back into your home, and definitely looking at your senses, I suppose. So your sight with our dim lighting, your smell, so those nice fragrances, things like lavender that are lovely and relaxing, or whatever makes you feel comfortable. Your sound, so that's where we've got our music from, and then your touch, your nice blankets and hugs, if that's something you can do at the moment. And then taste, because actually food can be a massive comfort, can't it? And I guess it can go one of two ways, in that we can maybe abuse it slightly negatively. I know for sure when we first went into lockdown, I suddenly went on a mad one baking cookies every single day. And I'm not someone who bakes, and it's not like I had any more spare time because I'm midwife, so I was working like normal. But there's something just comforting about some of that food sometimes, isn't there? And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it was the old cliche, wasn't it, that everyone was baking and making bread and all sorts of things. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, because some people had more time on their hands, but lots didn't. Lots of people had kids at home. Lots of people were still working. And so there's definitely a hunkering down, doing homely things that just make us feel good. And I think, great, if that makes you feel good, then go for it. As you said, we can abuse it by all means, and I'm sure many of us have, but there is a lot to be said for just doing what makes you feel good. We are all getting through everything day by day. And same with your pregnancy, you have to take it day by day and think about what makes you feel good, makes you feel happy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think sometimes when it comes to that kind of self-care and being kind to yourself, we really underestimate it. And I think sometimes, actually, to be fair to us all, in the age of current social media and with some of the journalism that's out there, no wonder we find it so hard. And one of my tips to all pregnant women, or actually just anybody who's struggling in the current times, is to cull your social media feed, because it can be so influencing, even without you really realizing. So I recommend, if there's anything that either doesn't make you feel good or sparks any kind of negative comparison, because we really shouldn't be comparing ourselves to anyone else, we're all individual, it's just unfollow those people or remove yourself from that particular group. And just be a little bit careful about what you're enabling into your mind, because like you were saying, your mind is so connected to everything else that goes on in your body.
Yeah, 100%. And even you can extend that to people around you as well. So the classic one with birth is, as soon as you get pregnant and as soon as you announce it, everyone starts volunteering their terrible birth stories and just frightening the life out of you. And actually, you are a different person with a different history, you are going to have a different birth yourself. And everyone is unique. And actually, it doesn't do you any favors to hear those awful stories. It just fills you with fear. So I always really encourage my clients to give themselves permission to protect themselves, to just say to whoever it might be, whether it's their mum or their sister or their friend, whoever, would you mind just pausing that, and can we talk about it after I've had my baby? Because you have to protect yourself and know what's going to help you and what isn't. And yeah, so that's one that I really recommend as well.
That's an amazing bit of advice, Rachel, because why is it that everyone likes to share a negative story, don't they? Whether that's birth or a restaurant review or or a hotel, people don't tend to celebrate the positives. You know, people are much more likely to leave a bad TripAdvisor review than they are a good one. And it's exactly the same with birth, isn't it? So actually there is hundreds of thousands of positive birth stories out there, but I can guarantee if you Google birth stories, the top 3 will be some sort of negative connotation associated, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's just one of the things about our society. You know, the media likes to print sensationalist news articles. We just don't tend to talk about birth in a very positive light. Quite often people talking about it is for therapy reasons. If they've had a bad experience, they want to talk about it for their own personal reasons. And so it's really important to try and surround yourself with positive stories, with positive birth stories and videos, so that you can see actually the really wonderful positive aspects of birth, and not just hear all that negative stuff.
Yeah, definitely. We've got to be so careful with what we allow ourselves to consume.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And as much as I am, I mean, pre-lockdown, I was absolutely a technophobe, and I'm starting to get used to technology. But actually, I think it's been a little bit of a lifesaver for lots of people in terms of being able to connect and actually make virtual support networks with the right sort of resources and people, and actually not underestimating the amazing impact that having virtual support can be. So whether that is other mums or whatever, but I just encourage everyone to kind of keep it real, I suppose, because it's very easy to put up a square of perfection and actually forget about everything else that's going on in that and around that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I love that point actually about connecting with other mums and things. There's so much out there now. This has forced everyone online. And so whilst, you know, most courses aren't running face to face, at least not group courses so much, but there is so much going on online. The positive birth movement has online meetups, virtual meetups. I've seen so much spring up in my social media feed. So the support is out there if you want to connect with other mums, both locally and anywhere in the country. The support is out there. It's about, you know, looking for it and asking around, because there's plenty there.
Yeah, definitely. And actually it's enabled lots of resources to kind of crop up. So in terms of things like for mindfulness, we've got the like NHS apps and things that people can download, and it makes it just even more accessible, doesn't it? YouTube is like a whole new world in itself, and there's loads of kind of mindfulness or even little yoga flows if you find that sort of relaxes your mind, moving your body in that way. There's so much material now, more than ever, that actually we can access, and it's a great time to embrace it, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. So a little bit about how I suppose we can continue to incorporate this into our everyday life, especially now more than ever. And a little bit, I think, that I like to add about this is trying to move your body, and the way that can really help your mind. So even just going for a 10-minute walk around the block, just getting that fresh air on your face, and that change of scenery can, I think, be a massive game changer to boosting your mind and your mental health that day.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. It's been one of my sort of challenges with young kids in some respects, but also needs to get out every day for some time. I've also been doing Pilates, which obviously I prefer it in the studio, but it went online to Zoom throughout lockdown, and just having that hour once a week of, there's nothing else that I can think about other than focusing on what I'm doing with my body right now. It's just so good mentally to just take that time out. And I really didn't feel like it at the end of the day. I was always exhausted and always whinging about it. But when you actually do it, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And then it releases those natural endorphins, doesn't it? Our nice feel-good hormones. And it does really just set you up for a better day or a better night's sleep and things like that. Did you find you had a 3-year-old hanging off your leg, or did you manage to get time just to yourself?
Generally, it was quiet. Occasionally, I would hear, a screaming baby in the distance, and my husband was trying to calm down. But yeah, no. Generally, it's quite sacrosanct, and I think actually both my husband and I have been very respectful of that. As he's a big runner, and so he does lots of running, and I'm like, we have to preserve that. That's your time. He finds it very good for his mental health, and so same, my hour of Pilates, he's like, that's your thing, and we will get through it, and we will make sure that happens. That's good.
That's amazing. And actually that's how teamwork can be just incredible in this circumstance, especially if you have like yourself, Rachel, got young children and you're locked down in that home environment. Actually having each other's backs, I suppose, and probably just communicating with each other and actually saying, this is what I need to be able to get through this. This is what you need. Let's put our cards on the table and figure it out. And I think communication is massive. And I think when we start to lose that, that's when everyone can get a little bit muddled.
Definitely. And it's been tested to the max, hasn't it? You know, it's been a real time of, right, well, if we're going to get through this, we need to work out what our non-negotiables are, what do we each need, and how are we going to make that happen for each other and for ourselves.
Definitely. And it's having that bit of not selfishness, but maybe slightly, but in a really good way and a really protective way. It's important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, and it's not selfish if it's the basics of what we need to get by, and the, you know, the sort of mental health side of stuff, the stuff that which we perhaps see as the softer side of life, is often the side which gets dropped when things get tough. And actually it's the stuff that we really need. And like I said earlier, if we would never give up trying to eat healthy or trying to move, and so this should be part and parcel of that.
Definitely. And I suppose for anyone listening, is there any top tips, Rachel, that you could share in your experiences or link to your hypnobirthing tools and techniques that can help people to kind of incorporate the mindfulness in whatever way works for them, really, into kind of real everyday family life or working life or whatever it might look like for them?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, that perspective. Okay, you must see this as important as your physical health. Okay, because if your mental health is suffering, your physical health is going to suffer as well. Okay, it's all as important as one another. And so you need to start seeing this as a priority of where you're going to fit it in. Okay. My second tip is all about seeing what works for you. Okay. Try some stuff out, see how you get on with it. And if something's not working, feel free to ditch it. Mindfulness looks different to different people, whether it is simply just learning to focus on your breath and take a deep breath sometimes, whether it is the movement side of things, whether it is simply having a bath every Tuesday night and playing a relaxation whilst you're in the bath. Whatever it looks like for you, whatever you feel works for you, that's the important thing, is finding out what actually works for you. And I think my final tip really is little and often. That point about not waiting until you are, really at the end of your tether and then thinking, right, I'll go and have a spa weekend. You know, it's not about these big things when we desperately need them. It's about every day or every couple of days, however you can sort of pepper them throughout your week, and thinking about, right, Friday night is going to be, I'm going to have an hour just sat talking to my partner or my best friend so that I can offload. And as I said, Tuesday night might be bath night, when I'm going to light some candles and just have half an hour for me, and some time to just focus on the present and maybe listen to a relaxation or listen to a really nice music playlist. So trying to get a routine into your week where you know that is going to happen at that time, however long or short it is, so that it doesn't just end up as another week's gone by without you being able to focus on yourself at all.
Definitely. And that's a really nice point, actually, Rachel, in that I think when we think of mindfulness, we kind of think of